They built perfect cities with no kings, no wars, and no chaos. And then, they disappeared without a sound. What secret buried beneath the Indus Valley has baffled historians for centuries? The City of Perfection. The sun rose over Mohenjo-Daro with quiet majesty, casting a golden hue over a city that pulsed with life. Stone-paved streets stretched in perfect lines, flanked by homes built with uniform bricks, their windows gazing out over the orderly calm of the Indus Valley civilization's crown jewel. The scent of wet earth and dried spices lingered in the air. In this world of symmetry and structure, Elon, a revered scholar-priest, moved like a quiet flame, observant, respected, and burdened with questions. Elon stood at the top of the great bath staircase, watching as workers filtered water through intricate drains. The city was an engineering marvel. Its people had tamed nature with cleanliness, precision, and trade. But Elon's thoughts wandered beyond the walls. Beyond the symmetry. Something, he sensed, had begun to shift. That morning, a merchant caravan arrived late, unusual for a network renowned for its timing. When questioned, the traders spoke of dry riverbeds and shuttered villages in the northern provinces. Crops had withered, and once reliable trade partners had vanished without explanation. Elon frowned, his fingers curling around a clay tablet. The data was clear, river levels were dropping. But why? No war had come. No enemy had crossed their borders. Yet trade was stalling, the sky was drier, and the people had begun whispering in worry behind their walls. At the temple, Elon consulted the elders. "The Gagger River recedes," he said, "and the summer rains fail to quench our fields. Our water is thinning. The gods, perhaps, are silent." One elder, grim-faced and old as stone, muttered, "We have lived in balance for centuries. But the river is no man's slave. If it chooses to walk away." Elon's mind raced. The river was their lifeblood. Without it, crops would fail, cities would crumble, and life itself would be lost to the sand. Still, he did not speak his fear. Instead, he retreated to the city's highest point, gazing across the grid rooftops toward the horizon, where clouds once danced and now refused to gather. He thought of the people, clean, orderly, devoted. They had built a city that rivaled the stars in harmony. Could such balance simply vanish? That evening, as twilight descended, a messenger arrived from the north. His eyes were hollow, his voice brittle. "Harappa is retreating. Wells are dry. Fields turned to dust. The city is emptying." Elon clutched the edge of the stone parapet. The signs were no longer whispers. They were echoes, growing louder by the day. He looked back at Mohenjo-Daro, glorious, perfect, and suddenly fragile. Something was unraveling, silently but steadily. And Elon knew, the answers would not come from the gods. They would have to be found in the earth. Cracks in the stone. The road north was dust-choked and silent. Elon's cart creaked over cracked riverbeds, where once the Gagger had sung with life. Now, dry reeds rattled like bones in the wind. He rode with a small escort, traders, scholars, and guards, all bearing the same question in their hearts: where had the river gone? Harappa, once a sister city of Mohenjo-Daro, stood like a ghost. Markets lay abandoned, warehouses empty. Wells had sunk into hollowness. The scent of decay hovered over the walls, and in its temples, the fires had long since gone out. Elon stepped into the gathering hall, where a lone priest swept dust from the floor with trembling hands. "Why did you stay?" Elon asked. The priest looked up, eyes glazed. "To listen. The gods were here once. But even silence speaks." That night, Elon recorded what he saw. The riverbed is fractured. Even the fish have left. The monsoon betrays us. This is no war of blade, but of breath and water. Returning south, Elon visited smaller settlements along the way, villages once proud, now shadows. Some had migrated, carrying whatever grain and clay they could. Others had simply disappeared. A child in one camp clutched a broken water jar like a treasure, whispering lullabies to a brother buried under dust. Back in Mohenjo-Daro, the mood had shifted. The grand streets were still swept, the drains still cleared, but a quiet fear threaded through every glance. Merchants hoarded grain. Wells ran slower. Rituals grew longer, louder, as if louder chants might bring back the rain. In the council chamber, elders argued. "This is a cycle," one said. "Droughts come. They pass." "Then why are the stars misaligned?" countered another. "Why do we see northern lights that never burned before?" Science and superstition collided. Scholars pointed to erratic monsoon patterns, soil degradation, and a shifting river. Priests blamed forgotten rituals, divine anger, or perhaps impurity in the cities themselves. Elon stayed silent until a dusty scroll arrived from the edge of the western desert. A forgotten manuscript, older than any he'd held. Within it, a prophecy etched in fading ink. "When the giver flees, and the sky hardens, the cities of man shall dry in silence. The wise will listen. The proud will fall." Elon stared at the words long after the others had left. They weren't mere superstition. They were a warning, a pattern repeating itself, unnoticed by those who worshipped stability. The next morning, Elon stood by the edge of the Gagger. A faint trickle ran through it, barely enough to moisten his sandals. He touched the water and felt no coolness, only memory. The river was not dying. It was leaving. And when the river leaves, it does not return. The great silence. Wind whipped through the empty streets of Mohenjo-Daro, carrying dust where children once played. The markets, once vibrant with traders and spices, now echoed with the creak of abandoned stalls. Elon walked alone beneath the arches of the granary, his footsteps hollow, his robes heavy with sand. He could feel the city shedding its skin. The Gagger's disappearance had transformed more than the land. It had hollowed the spirit of the people. Fields once rich with barley now bore cracks that split the earth. Wells ran dry, and those who could afford to leave had already vanished, their homes sealed in silence. In the council chamber, only half the seats were filled. The rest had gone north, west, or simply disappeared into the wilderness. A scholar named Rika, once Elon's student, stepped forward with urgency. "Disease is spreading in the eastern quarter. Without clean water, it feeds on the weak." Elon nodded. "We must stop the gatherings, ritual or not." The priests disagreed. "If the gods are punishing us, we must show devotion, not defiance." Arguments turned to shouts, then silence. Elon had no energy left for debate. The time for pleading with gods or men had passed. He returned to the central temple alone that evening, carrying a small chest wrapped in cloth. Inside were clay tablets, etched with knowledge, charts of trade, records of weather, scrolls of engineering and medicine. All that remained of a civilization's wisdom. In the quiet chamber, lit only by flickering oil lamps, Elon placed the chest beneath a stone slab in the floor. He whispered a silent vow, not to the gods, but to time itself. "If no one remains to remember, then let the earth remember." Rika found him there the next morning, staring at the eastern sky. Smoke trailed from distant homes. The smell of burning grain hung in the air. Desperation now walked among them. "Elon," she said gently, "there are plans to migrate south, toward the coast. Will you come?" He looked to the horizon, then back to the empty streets. This city was built with intention. Every line, every stone, in harmony with the river. "If I leave, I become a stranger to its memory." Rika didn't argue. She only pressed a small satchel into his hands. "If you stay, then let the story stay with you." That night, a sandstorm swallowed the city. Winds howled through the walls, erasing footprints, rattling doors. And still, Elon sat in the temple, unmoved, as if he were already part of the stone. Mohenjo-Daro did not fall in fire or flood. It was undone by absence, one drop at a time. And beneath its temple floor, the heartbeat of a vanished world waited, for someone, someday, to listen. Whispers from the dust. Thousands of years later, the desert winds still swept across the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, now little more than crumbled bricks and forgotten alleys. Yet beneath the silence, something stirred, a buried voice that had waited, patient and still. Dr. Naira Dev, a leading archaeologist from the South Asian Heritage Institute, crouched beside a newly uncovered chamber at the heart of the ruins. Her hands were steady, but her heart raced. The LiDAR scans had shown a sealed cavity beneath the temple floor, an anomaly untouched by time or thieves. "This chamber," she murmured, brushing dirt from a faint carving on the stone, "it was meant to be hidden." Her team watched as the slab lifted with care. What lay beneath wasn't treasure, but a clay chest, modest, intact, wrapped in linen hardened with age. Naira knelt and opened it slowly. Inside, etched tablets, scroll fragments, and a stylized pendant shaped like flowing water. She turned one of the tablets under the light. The inscriptions were unmistakable, Harappan script. Symbols long undeciphered, yet here they were, arranged with precision, purpose. One piece caught her eye. A stylized map, showing the Indus and Gagger rivers. But it also had markings no other document had shown, arrows, migration paths, annotations. It wasn't just history. It was testimony. Over the next days, Naira translated what little she could. With software and symbols, a message began to emerge, not in language, but in rhythm and pattern. It was Elon's final act, a memory sealed in stone. We did not vanish. We whispered into the earth. We were not taken by war, but by silence. When the river left, we left our story behind. Naira stared at the final symbol, a hand reaching toward the sky, lines rippling outward. It wasn't just a record. It was a call. Later, at a press briefing, she stood before the world and spoke, her voice quiet but certain. The Indus Valley civilization did not fall in violence. It faded with grace, in harmony with the land that once gave it life. What we found beneath Mohenjo-Daro is not a tomb, it is a message. The world listened. But questions remained. Why had they left no weapons, no grand tombs, no written farewells? Why did they choose silence over struggle? Naira didn't pretend to have all the answers. But as she walked through the wind-blown ruins one final time, she imagined Elon, seated in the temple, waiting not for gods, but for listeners. A civilization, she realized, doesn't die when its bricks collapse. It dies when no one remembers. And now, someone did. As the sun dipped behind the ancient walls, the air stirred with more than wind. It carried the faintest echo, a whisper from dust, finally heard.